The screen flickered on at 2:47 a.m. Yoon-gyeol froze. The warehouse camera showed a woman tied to a metal chair, her head slumped forward, hair stuck to her face with sweat and blood. The zip ties around her wrists were cutting deep. 3 men circled her slowly, taking turns stepping into frame like they wanted the camera to see what they were about to do. His secretary, alive, barely. One of the men grabbed her chin and yanked her head up. Even without sound, Yoon-gyeol could see her mouth form his name. Something inside him snapped. "Lock down the city," he said, already standing. "Every exit, every road." His men didn't ask questions. They saw his face. By the time the engine roared to life, Yoon-gyeol was already loading a gun, hands steady, eyes empty. He rewound the footage once, just once, watching her flinch when a fist came too close. That was all it took. Across the city, the warehouse lights suddenly went dark, and the men inside had no idea that the last thing they'd ever done was touch someone who belonged to the most dangerous man in Seoul. Before we go any further, if you're still here after that, you're already part of this story. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because this one is about to get intense. And if you love stories where danger meets loyalty, where one decision changes everything, subscribe now. Yoon-gyeol never checked security footage at 3 in the morning, but tonight his gut told him something was wrong. The screen flickered to life, and what he saw made every muscle in his body lock up like iron. His rivals had Olivia. So hey, before we get into this wild ride, you're going to want to stick around because what happens next, nobody sees coming. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m., and there she was in that abandoned warehouse on the east side, tied to a chair with her head hanging forward. Yoon-gyeol's hand gripped the edge of his desk so hard the wood creaked under his fingers. 3 men circled her, and even though the camera had no sound, he could see her shoulders shaking. She was scared, and that fact alone made something dangerous wake up inside his chest. "Get every available man," he said to his second-in-command without looking away from the screen. "Right now." Within 15 minutes, they'd mobilized. Yoon-gyeol didn't speak during the drive, and his crew knew better than to ask questions when he got like this. The thing was, Olivia wasn't supposed to matter this much. She'd been his secretary for 8 months, efficient and smart, always 3 steps ahead of whatever he needed. She made his coffee exactly right, organized his chaos, and sometimes when she smiled at him over her desk, he forgot what he was supposed to be doing. But this was different. They hit the warehouse hard and fast, and Yoon-gyeol went in first despite his men's protests. The rivals scattered like roaches when the lights came on, disappearing through back exits before anyone could grab them. Probably for the best, he thought, because if he got his hands on them right then... Olivia lifted her head when she heard footsteps, and her eyes went wide when she recognized him. "Sir, Her voice cracked and she stopped talking. "Don't," Yoon-gyeol said quietly, already working on the ropes around her wrists. "Just don't talk yet." Her hands were shaking when he freed them, and without thinking, he caught them in his own to steady them. They were cold, too cold, and she had marks on her arms where they'd grabbed her. No serious injuries that he could see, but the fear in her eyes was enough to make his jaw clench. "Can you walk?" he asked. She nodded, but when she tried to stand, her legs gave out. Yoon-gyeol caught her before she could fall, one arm around her waist, solid and sure. For maybe 3 seconds they just stood there, her leaning against him, his heart doing something weird in his chest that he didn't want to examine too closely. "Sorry," she whispered. It's been a long night." "Yeah," he said, and his voice came out rougher than he meant it to. "Let's get you out of here." He helped her to the car, and she didn't let go of his arm the whole way. His men pretended not to notice, and Yoon-gyeol was grateful for that much at least. In the back seat, Olivia sat pressed against the door, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold herself together. "How did you know where I was?" she asked after a while. Yoon-gyeol glanced at her, then back at the road ahead. "Checked the CCTV when you didn't answer your phone. Tracked your location from there." "You check security footage at 3 a.m.? When my people are missing, yeah." The word people felt wrong, but he didn't know what else to call her. Employee? That wasn't right either, not anymore. Not after tonight. She was quiet for a long moment and then said very softly, "Thank you." He wanted to tell her she didn't need to thank him, that of course he came for her, that the thought of something happening to her made him feel like he was losing his mind. Instead, he just nodded and kept his eyes forward. Back at his penthouse, Yoon-gyeol's housekeeper, Mrs. Choi, fussed over Olivia like she was a long-lost daughter. She made tea, found clean clothes, drew a hot bath, and shooed Yoon-gyeol away when he tried to hover. He paced in his office for an hour, replaying that security footage in his head, seeing her scared face over and over until he wanted to put his fist through something. When Mrs. Choi finally left around 5 a.m., the apartment fell quiet except for the city's sounds filtering through the windows. Yoon-gyeol found Olivia curled up on his couch, drowning in one of his old university hoodies, looking tiny and lost. She had a mug of tea cradled in both hands, but she wasn't drinking it. "You should rest," he said from the doorway. She looked up at him, and something in her expression made his chest tight. "I keep thinking about what they said. That you'd come for me because I'm—" She stopped, bit her lip. "They wanted to use me as bait." Yoon-gyeol moved into the room, sat down on the opposite end of the couch. Not too close, but close enough. "They're not wrong. I did come for you." "But why?" Her voice cracked on the question. "I'm just your secretary. You could have sent anyone. You didn't have to—" "Olivia." He said her name carefully, like it was something precious. "You're not just anything." She stared at him, and he watched about 17 different emotions cross her face. "I don't understand." Honestly, neither did he. Yoon-gyeol had built his life on being untouchable, on not letting anyone get close enough to be used against him. His world was dangerous, complicated, full of people who'd knife you in the back as soon as look at you. Caring about someone was a weakness he couldn't afford. But here they were. "Look," he said, running a hand through his hair, "I know this whole situation is complicated, and I know you probably want to quit, find somewhere safer to work, and I wouldn't blame you, but—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I'd really like it if you stayed." "Stayed as your secretary, stayed in my life." The words came out before he could stop them. And yeah, okay, that was definitely more honest than he'd planned on being. Olivia set down her tea mug with shaky hands. "Mr. Kwon." "Yoon-gyeol," he interrupted. "If we're doing this, you should probably call me Yoon-gyeol." "This?" she echoed. "What's this?" Good question. He didn't have a good answer, not yet. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know that when I saw you on that camera tonight, He stopped, jaw working. "I've never been that scared in my entire life, and I've been in a lot of scary situations." She wrapped her arms around herself again, that same self-protective gesture from earlier. "I'm scared too, not just because of tonight, but because I like working for you. I like being around you, probably more than I should, and now everything's different, and I don't know what happens next." Yoon-gyeol felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been wound tight for months without him even realizing it. "Maybe we figure it out together," he suggested quietly. "One day at a time." "One day at a time," she repeated. And finally, she smiled. It was small and uncertain, but it was there. The sun was starting to come up over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, not touching but not alone either, and for the first time in a very long time, Yoon-gyeol let himself hope that maybe, possibly, he could have something good in his life, something worth protecting. 3 weeks passed before Olivia came back to work and Yoon-gyeol didn't push. He had security posted at her apartment building, made sure someone checked on her every day, and maybe sent more food deliveries than was strictly necessary. His men gave him weird looks, but nobody said anything because, well, he was still their boss and they valued their jobs. When she finally walked back into the office, Yoon-gyeol looked up from his paperwork and forgot how to breathe for a second. She'd cut her hair shorter, just above her shoulders, and she looked determined. Nervous, but determined. "I'm ready to come back," she announced, "if you'll still have me." "My office has been a disaster without you," he said, which was true. "Mrs. Han from accounting tried to reorganize my files and I still can't find anything." That made her laugh, and the sound did something warm and uncomfortable to his insides. "Well, we can't have that," she said, setting her bag down at her desk. "Where should I start?" They fell back into their routine, but it wasn't quite the same as before. There were moments now, small ones, where their hands would brush when passing documents and neither of them would pull away immediately. Times when he'd catch her looking at him with this expression he couldn't quite read. Instances where he'd find excuses to walk past her desk just to... What? See her? Check that she was really there and safe? Yeah, he had it bad. 2 months after the warehouse incident, Yoon-Gyeol had a meeting that ran late and he found Olivia still at her desk at 8 p.m., frowning at her computer screen. "You should go home," he said, leaning against her doorframe. She jumped, hand flying to her chest. "You scared me." "Sorry." He wasn't, actually, but it seemed like the thing to say. "What are you still doing here?" "Trying to organize the schedules for next month. You have 3 meetings booked at the same time on the 15th. Cancel 2 of them." "Which 2? Yoon-Gyeol thought about it. "The boring ones." She gave him a look, the one that said she thought he was being ridiculous, but also kind of funny. "They're all going to be boring. That's what business meetings are." "Exactly, so it doesn't matter which ones I miss." He pushed off the doorframe, moved closer to her desk. "Have you eaten?" "I had a sandwich at lunch." "That was 7 hours ago. Come on, I know a place." She looked uncertain. Are we... "It's dinner, Olivia. Between 2 people who both need to eat. Don't overthink it." Except she was right to overthink it, because the place Yoon-Gyeol took her to was definitely, absolutely a date spot. Small and intimate, with low lighting and good food, the kind of restaurant where couples went to celebrate anniversaries. His favorite table in the back corner was available because the owner, Mr. Park, always kept it free for him. "This is nice," Olivia said, looking around with wide eyes. "Really nice. Do you come here a lot?" "Sometimes, when I need to think." Or when he needed to get away from the weight of his responsibilities, the constant pressure of running an organization that operated in the gray spaces between legal and not quite legal. They ordered, and while they waited, Eun-Gyeol found himself talking about things he never talked about. His childhood, growing up in Busan before his family moved to Seoul, how he'd gotten into this life almost by accident, helping out his uncle with what he thought were legitimate business deals until he was in too deep to walk away. The choices he'd made that led him here, to this moment, sitting across from a woman who made him want to be different, maybe. Olivia listened without judging, her chin propped on her hand, eyes never leaving his face. When he finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a long moment. "That must have been really hard," she said eventually, "not having a choice about the life you wanted." "We always have choices," Yoon-Gyeol replied. "I just made the ones that kept my family safe, kept food on the table. Sometimes that's all you can do." "And now?" "Now." He hesitated, turning his water glass in circles on the table. "Now I'm trying to figure out what I want, not what I need." Her eyes softened and, yeah, she understood what he wasn't quite saying. "For what it's worth, I think you're a good person trying to do his best in a complicated situation. You don't know everything I've done. Maybe not, but I know you came for me when I was in trouble. I know you make sure your people are taken care of. I know you work 16-hour days because you don't trust anyone else to handle the important stuff." She paused. "And I know that when you smile, really smile, it changes your whole face." Yoon-Gyeol felt his ears get hot and he looked away. "I don't smile that often." "You should. It's a good look on you." Their food arrived and they ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about growing up in Johannesburg, about her family's restaurant where she'd learned to cook alongside her grandmother, about moving to Seoul 3 years ago for a fresh start after a relationship went wrong. How she'd stumbled into the secretary position almost by luck, answering an ad without really knowing who she'd be working for. "Were you scared when you found out?" Yoon-gyeol asked. "About what I do?" "Terrified," she admitted, "but also curious, I guess. You're not what I expected. None of this is." "What did you expect?" She smiled a little. "Someone colder, probably. More, I don't know, dramatic. But you're just you. You drink too much coffee, you hate paperwork, you remember everyone's birthday, and you always say thank you when I do things for you, even though that's literally my job. Those things matter," he said quietly. "The small things. My father taught me that before he died. Treat people with respect, and they'll respect you back. Or at least they'll think twice before betraying you." Cynical. Realistic. But he was smiling when he said it. After that dinner, something shifted between them. Not dramatically, not all at once, but like ice slowly melting in spring. Yoon-gyeol started finding excuses to see her outside of work, suggesting coffee breaks that turned into long walks through the city. Olivia would text him funny observations about their co-workers, and he'd find himself grinning at his phone like a teenager. One Saturday, he showed up at her apartment with takeout from that restaurant she'd mentioned missing from back home. He'd had to call in 3 favors and pay through the nose for ingredients. But the look on her face when she opened the door and saw the familiar containers made it worth every penny. "How did you—" She stared at him, then at the food, then back at him. "Yoon-gyeol, this is from Johannesburg. How did you get this?" He shrugged, suddenly feeling awkward standing in her doorway with bags of food. "I know people who know people. Can I come in, or are we eating in the hallway?" She stepped back quickly, gesturing him inside. Her apartment was small but cozy, full of bright colors and photos and things that made it feel lived in and warm, so different from his sterile penthouse with its modern furniture and lack of personality. They ate sitting on her living room floor because her table was currently covered in paperwork from a class she was taking. "Online business management," she explained when he asked. "Figured I should probably have some actual qualifications for this job beyond making good coffee and putting up with you." "You do more than that." "Yeah, well, still." She picked at her food, not quite meeting his eyes. I don't want you to think I'm only useful for secretary stuff, if that makes sense." It made more sense than she probably realized. Yoon-gyeol set down his fork, giving her his full attention. "Olivia, you're the smartest person I know. You've basically been running my organization for months without anyone realizing it because you make it look easy. The fact that you don't have a fancy degree doesn't change that." She looked up at him then, something vulnerable in her expression. "You really think that?" "I know it." He leaned back against her couch, stretching his legs out. "Why do you think I panic whenever you take a day off? Nothing works without you." "That's probably not healthy, organizationally speaking." "Probably not," he agreed. "But I've got bigger problems to worry about than organizational health." They talked late into the night, and somewhere around midnight, Olivia started yawning. She tried to hide it, but Eun-gyeol noticed anyway, because he noticed everything about her now. The way she twisted her hair around her finger when she was thinking. How she always took her shoes off the second she got home. The fact that she kept her apartment slightly too warm because she was always cold. "I should go," he said, even though leaving was the last thing he wanted to do. "Let you get some sleep." "You could stay." The words came out rushed, and she immediately looked flustered. "I mean, on the couch, if you want. It's late, and I know you have security concerns, and—" "Olivia." He said her name, gently, standing up. "That's probably not a good idea." Her face fell, and he realized too late how that sounded. "No, wait, I don't mean—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. "I want to stay, that's the problem. I want to stay, and I want more than I should want. And you deserve better than me stumbling through this and messing it up." She stood too, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something fruity and warm. "What if I don't want better? What if I just want you?" Yoon-gil's heart was doing that weird thing again where it forgot how to beat properly. You don't know what you're saying. I'm saying that I like you. A lot. And I'm tired of pretending I don't. She was looking right at him now, chin lifted in that determined way of hers. I'm saying that, yeah, your life is complicated and probably dangerous and definitely not what I planned for myself, but you make me laugh and you make me feel safe, and when I'm with you, everything else just quiets down, I guess. He should leave. He should walk out that door right now before this went any further, before he let himself believe that maybe he could have this. But his feet weren't moving, and Olivia was still standing there, waiting for him to say something. Anything. I can't promise you a normal life, he said finally. I can't promise that things won't be complicated or scary sometimes. But I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, to make you happy, if you'll let me try. That's all I'm asking for, she said softly. Just try with me. So he stayed. They didn't do anything except talk and eventually fall asleep on opposite ends of her couch, but it felt monumental anyway, like crossing some invisible line that they couldn't uncross. When Yoon-gil woke up the next morning with a crick in his neck and Olivia curled up under a blanket on the other side of the couch, he felt something settle in his chest. This was what he wanted, her, them, whatever this was becoming. His phone buzzed with messages from his security team, probably wondering where he was, but Yoon-gil ignored them. For once in his life, work could wait. Right now, watching Olivia sleep with her hair falling across her face and her hand curled under her cheek, this was exactly where he needed to be. Dating while running a criminal organization turned out to be complicated in ways Yoon-gil hadn't anticipated. He couldn't just take Olivia anywhere without considering security risks, couldn't talk about his day without editing out the dangerous parts, couldn't introduce her to most of his associates because the less they knew about her, the safer she was. But they made it work. He took her to a private art gallery on a Tuesday afternoon when the place was closed to the public. The owner owed him a favor and was happy to let them wander through empty rooms full of paintings and sculptures. Olivia stood in front of a huge canvas covered in bold strokes of color and light, tilting her head like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "What do you think it means?" she asked. Yoon-gil had absolutely no idea. Art wasn't really his thing, but watching her enjoy it, that he could do all day. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe the artist just liked the colors. That's the most emotionally avoidant art interpretation I've ever heard. I'm emotionally avoidant about most things, he pointed out. You knew that when you signed up for this. She turned to look at him, amusement dancing in her eyes. Signed up for what exactly? You never actually asked me to be your girlfriend. We just sort of fell into this. He'd been thinking about that, actually. How to make this official without making it weird. Olivia, would you... Don't. She held up a hand, stopping him. Don't ask me in an empty art gallery because you feel obligated. Ask me when you really want to, when it feels right. Relief flooded through him because, yeah, she got it. She got him. Okay, he said. But for the record, I'm already thinking of you that way, as my girlfriend. If that's... Is that weird to say? Little bit, she admitted, but also sweet, in your weird, emotionally avoidant way. They moved on to the next room and she slipped her hand into his, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Yoon-gil laced their fingers together and tried not to think too hard about how right it felt. A week later, Olivia had a birthday, and Yoon-gil went slightly overboard. He couldn't help it. He'd been watching her drop hints for weeks about things she liked, places she wanted to go, and he'd filed every single comment away in his mental database. So when the day came, he picked her up at dawn and drove her 2 hours outside the city to a lavender farm she'd mentioned seeing online. "You remembered?" she said, staring out the window at the purple fields stretching toward the horizon. "I remember everything you tell me." It came out more intense than he meant it to, but it was true. Every conversation, every small detail, he kept it all locked away like treasure. They spent the morning walking through the lavender, and Olivia took about 1,000 photos on her phone. Yoon Gaeul mostly took photos of her when she wasn't looking, trying to capture the way the sunlight caught in her hair, the pure joy on her face. At one point, she grabbed his hand and pulled him into the middle of a field, spinning around with her arms spread wide. "Thank you for this," she said, a little breathless. "This is perfect. It's just flowers." "It's not just flowers. It's you paying attention. It's you caring enough to drive 2 hours because I mentioned something once." She stopped spinning, looking at him seriously. "That matters. You matter." Yoon Gil felt his throat get tight and he had to look away before he did something embarrassing. "Yeah, well, you matter too." "Smooth," she teased, but she was smiling. For lunch, he'd arranged a picnic under one of the big trees at the edge of the property. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and fruit and her favorite chocolate cake from the bakery near his office. They sat on a blanket and ate and talked about nothing important, and it was maybe the most relaxed Yoon Gil had felt in years. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia said after a while, picking at the edge of the blanket. "And you have to be honest. Always. Do you ever regret it? Getting involved with me? I know it makes your life more complicated." Yoon Gil set down his water bottle and turned to face her fully. "The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. You don't complicate my life, Olivia. You make it make sense." She blinked rapidly, and yeah, maybe she was crying a little. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." "Then people haven't been paying attention." He reached over and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb, the gesture so natural he didn't even think about it. "You're kind and smart and funny, and you make every room brighter just by being in it. Anyone who doesn't see that is an idiot." "Including you?" she asked, voice wobbly. "Because you spent 8 months not seeing it." "Yeah, well, I already admitted I was emotionally avoidant. Try to keep up." That made her laugh through her tears, and she shoved his shoulder lightly. "You're impossible. But you like me anyway. Unfortunately, for both of us. Yeah, I really do." They stayed at the farm until sunset, not wanting the day to end. On the drive back to Seoul, Olivia fell asleep in the passenger seat with her head against the window. Yoon Gil kept glancing over at her, this woman who'd somehow crashed into his carefully controlled life and rearranged everything. His phone buzzed with work messages, but he ignored them. Whatever crisis was happening could wait until tomorrow. Right now, driving through the darkening countryside with Olivia beside him, he had everything he needed. Things were good for almost 3 months, and then the universe remembered that Yoon Gil's life wasn't allowed to be simple. It started with weird hang-up calls to Olivia's phone. Then someone tried to follow her home from the grocery store, backing off only when Yoon Gil's security team intervened. Small things that added up to big problems. Someone was sending a message and Yoon Gil was receiving it loud and clear. "I want you to move in with me," he said one night over dinner at his place. "Temporarily, just until we figure out who's targeting you." Olivia set down her fork slowly. "Targeting me? Yoon Gil, what's going on?" He'd been trying to shield her from the details, but maybe that was a mistake. She deserved to know what she was dealing with. "There's a rival group making moves into our territory. They've been testing boundaries, seeing where we're weak, and they've figured out that you're—" He trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. "That I'm what? A weakness?" She didn't sound hurt, just resigned. "That you're important to me," he corrected, "which makes you a target. I know that's not fair, and I know this is exactly the kind of complication you were worried about, but I need to know you're safe. Please." She was quiet for a long time, pushing food around her plate. Finally, she looked up at him. "Okay, but on one condition." "Anything." "Stop trying to protect me from the truth. I'm in this with you, which means I need to know what's actually happening. No more hiding the scary parts to keep me calm." Yoon Gil wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that ignorance was its own kind of protection, but the determined set of her jaw told him it wouldn't work. "Okay," he agreed, "full transparency from now on." So Olivia moved into his penthouse, and it was both wonderful and terrifying. Wonderful because he got to see her every morning, sleepy-eyed and warm. Terrifying because every day she stayed in his world was another day something could go wrong. He threw himself into work, trying to neutralize the threat against them. Olivia, meanwhile, surprised him by diving into research, using her business classes and natural intelligence to analyze their rivals' operations. She started sitting in on strategy meetings, and more than once, her observations led to breakthroughs his experienced team had missed. "You're really good at this," Yoon-gil told her one night, watching her mark up a map of the city with different colored pens. "Don't sound so surprised," she said without looking up. "I told you I was useful for more than making coffee." I was never surprised, just impressed. She glanced up at him then, a small smile playing at her lips. "Yeah? Yeah." He moved to stand behind her chair, looking down at her work. "You see patterns no one else sees. You ask questions everyone else is afraid to ask. You're fearless." "I'm not fearless. I'm terrified like 90% of the time." "Being scared but doing it anyway? That's the definition of brave." Olivia leaned, back in her chair, tilting her head to look up at him. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." "Right, because the guy who once tried to microwave a metal fork is a fountain of wisdom." "That was one time and you promised never to bring it up again." Their easy banter felt normal, felt safe, even with everything else happening around them. These were the moments Yoon-gil treasured most, when they could just be themselves without the weight of the world pressing down. But reality had a way of intruding. The attack on their main warehouse came on a Thursday, coordinated and vicious. Nobody got seriously hurt thanks to their increased security, but it was a clear escalation. Yoon-gil spent 12 hours dealing with the fallout, making calls, repositioning resources, and when he finally got home, he was exhausted in a way that went bone deep. Olivia was waiting up for him, curled on the couch with a book she wasn't actually reading. She took one look at his face and set it aside. "Come here," she said softly, patting the space beside her. He collapsed next to her, letting his head fall back against the cushions. "I'm tired," he admitted. "So tired of all of this." "I know." She reached over and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "But you're handling it. You're keeping everyone safe." "What if I can't, though? What if—" He stopped, jaw working. "What if something happens to you because of me? I couldn't—" "Olivia, I couldn't survive that." "Hey." She squeezed his hand until he looked at her. "Nothing's going to happen to me because you won't let it. You're the most stubborn, protective person I've ever met. If anyone comes after me, they'll have to go through you first. And honestly, I feel sorry for them." That startled a laugh out of him, rough and unexpected. "You have way too much faith in me." "Maybe you should have more faith in yourself." She shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "You're doing your best in an impossible situation. That's all anyone can ask for." They sat like that for a long time, neither of them speaking, just taking comfort in each other's presence. Outside, Seoul glittered with a million lights, oblivious to the small drama playing out in this apartment. Yoon-gil closed his eyes and let himself breathe, really breathe, for the first time all day. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what? For staying. For not running when things got complicated. For being here." Olivia tilted her head to look at him. "Where else would I be?" And that, right there, that simple statement, was worth more than all the money and power and respect he'd accumulated over the years. She chose to be here, chose him, knowing everything that came with it. Maybe they'd figure this out after all. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of Yoon-gil's street-level informants caught wind of the rival group's next move, giving them just enough warning to set up a counter-operation. It wasn't violent because Yoon-gil had promised Olivia he'd handle things differently this time. Instead, they leveraged information, calling in favors from people in positions of power who could make the rival group's legitimate business interests very difficult very quickly. Within 2 weeks, the pressure backed off. The threatening calls stopped. The shadows watching Olivia's movements disappeared. It wasn't a permanent solution, probably, but it bought them breathing room. "So that's it. Olivia asked when he told her. It's over? For now, Yoon-gil said carefully. This life, there's always going to be something. Someone pushing boundaries, testing limits. But right now, we're safe. She nodded slowly, processing that. And what about us? Where do we go from here? It was the question he'd been asking himself for weeks. Yoon-gil had spent his entire adult life avoiding emotional attachments, telling himself it was safer for everyone that way. But Olivia had blown through all his careful defenses, and now here they were, tangled up in each other's lives in a way that should terrify him. It didn't, though. Or rather, it did, but not enough to make him want to walk away. I was thinking, he started, then stopped. Started again. What if you stayed? Not just until the threat is over, permanently. Olivia's eyes went wide. You want me to live with you? I want you to live with me, work with me, be with me, all of it. He was rushing now, the words tumbling out faster than he could organize them. I know it's fast and I know my life is complicated, but you make everything better. You make me better. And I don't want to go back to how things were before you. She just stared at him, and for a horrible moment, Yoon-gil thought he'd miscalculated, pushed too hard too fast. But then she smiled, that beautiful full wattage smile that made his chest ache. Okay, she said simply. Yeah, okay, let's do this. Really? Really. She moved, closer, taking both his hands in hers. I love you. I think I've loved you since you showed up at my door with that ridiculous amount of takeout food, maybe even before that. And yeah, your life is complicated and probably always will be, but my life is better with you in it. So yes, I'll stay. Yoon-gil felt something crack open inside his chest, something warm and terrifying and absolutely right. I love you too, he said, and the words felt monumental. I'm probably going to be terrible at this, at the whole relationship thing, but you'll try, she finished for him. That's all I need. Just keep trying with me. I can do that. They had their first official date as an actual established couple a week later. Eun-gil took her to a rooftop restaurant with a view of the entire city, the kind of place where reservations were impossible to get unless you knew people, which of course, he did. They ate good food, drank wine, and talked about their future in hypotheticals that were starting to feel like possibilities. What do you want? Olivia asked, spinning her wine glass slowly. Like, long-term. If you could have anything. Yoon-gil thought about it. A year ago, he would have said power, security, respect. Now, this, he said, gesturing between them. You, happy and safe. Maybe eventually finding a way to make my business more legitimate so I don't have to worry about someone using you to get to me. A life that's ours, not defined by what I do or who's trying to take me down. That sounds nice, she said softly. Really nice. What about you? What do you want? She was quiet for a moment, gazing out at the city lights. I want to build something of my own, maybe. Use what I've learned working with you to start a consulting business or something. I want us to travel, see places I've only read about. And I want... She paused, looking a little embarrassed. I want Sunday mornings where we don't have to think about work or threats or anything except what we're making for breakfast. Done, Yoon-gil said immediately, starting this Sunday. You can't just declare Sunday mornings off when you run an organization. Watch me. And he did. That Sunday, Yoon-gil turned off his phone, ignored the protests from his security team, and spent the morning making pancakes with Olivia in his kitchen. They were terrible at it, burning the first 3 batches before finally getting ones that were at least edible. They ate them at his dining table, laughing about their complete lack of cooking skills, making plans for the week ahead. It was normal and domestic and everything Yoon-gil never thought he could have. Looking at Olivia across the table, her face lit up with happiness, he felt something settle in his chest. This was what mattered. Not territory or power or respect from people who'd betray him given half a chance. Just her. Just them. Just this. What are you thinking about? Olivia asked, noticing his expression. How lucky I am. he said honestly. That you walked into my office 8 months ago. That you stayed even when things got scary. That you're here right now eating terrible pancakes and planning your consulting business. They're not that terrible. Olivia, we could use these as weapons. She laughed and threw a piece of pancake at him, which he caught and ate just to prove a point. They spent the rest of the morning cleaning up their kitchen disaster and planning a trip to the coast for the following month. Small things, normal things. Building a life together one Sunday morning at a time. Later, when they were curled up on the couch with a movie neither of them was really watching, Olivia said, "You know what's funny? That CCTV footage, the night everything changed? I used to wish I could forget seeing myself like that, but now I'm kind of grateful for it." Yoon-gyeol looked down at her, confused. Grateful? It showed you how much you cared, made you actually do something about these feelings, instead of just ignoring them forever. She poked his chest lightly. Because, let's be honest, you would have kept dancing around this for years if something hadn't forced your hand. He couldn't argue with that. Probably, he admitted. I'm not great at feelings. You're getting better, though. That's what matters. They fell asleep like that, tangled together on his couch, the movie still playing softly in the background. And when Eun-gyeol woke up a few hours later to find Olivia still curled against him, peaceful and warm, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he could have this. A life beyond the organization, beyond the constant struggle for power and survival. A life with her. A life worth living. Everything fell apart on a Tuesday. Yoon-gyeol had been working longer hours lately, coming home past midnight smelling like cigarette smoke and whiskey. Olivia tried not to worry because she trusted him. She did. But when your boyfriend runs an organization that operates in shadows, it's hard not to let your mind wander to dark places. The night it happened, she was already asleep when she heard the door open around 2 a.m. She sat up, blinking in the darkness as Yoon-gyeol stumbled into the bedroom, clearly drunk. He never got drunk, not like this, and alarm bells started ringing in her head. "Where have you been?" she asked, turning on the bedside lamp. He squinted against the light, swaying slightly. "Meeting. Ran late." "You smell like a bar." She got out of bed, moving closer, and that's when she caught it. The unmistakable scent of perfume, sweet and floral, definitely not hers. "Yoon-gyeol, why do you smell like perfume?" He looked confused, then glanced down at his shirt like he could see the smell. "What? Don't lie to me." Her voice came out sharper than she meant it to. "You promised full transparency, remember? So tell me why you're coming home at 2 a.m. drunk, smelling like another woman." Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe. And Olivia felt her stomach drop. "It's not what you think," he said, but his words were slurred and unconvincing. "Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty bad." Yoon-gyeol ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through the alcohol haze. I can't talk about this right now. I'm too drunk and you're upset and..." "You're right, I'm upset. You're stumbling in here smelling like you've been with someone else and you won't even explain yourself." She crossed her arms, trying to hold herself together. "Sleep on the couch tonight. We'll talk in the morning when you're sober." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Instead, he nodded once and left the room, closing the door quietly behind him. Olivia stood there for a long moment, listening to him fumble around in the living room before collapsing back onto the bed. She didn't sleep. How could she? Her mind kept replaying every late night, every vague excuse, every time he'd been distant these past few weeks. Had there been someone else this whole time? Was everything they'd built together just a lie? By morning, Yoon-gyeol was gone. He'd left a note on the kitchen counter that just said, "I'm sorry. We'll talk tonight." No explanation, no reassurance, just those 6 words that somehow made everything worse. Olivia went to work on autopilot, grateful that she had her own office now and didn't have to sit at the secretary desk where everyone could see her falling apart. She tried to focus on spreadsheets and schedules, but her mind kept drifting back to that perfume, that guilty look on his face. Around noon, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Just a photo. She opened it and her world tilted sideways. It was Eun-Gyeol at a high-end club, sitting in a booth with a woman, a beautiful woman with long dark hair and a dress that probably cost more than Olivia's entire wardrobe. They weren't touching, but they were close, talking, and the woman was laughing at something he'd said. The timestamp showed last night, around midnight. Another text came through. Thought you should know what your boyfriend does when you're asleep? Olivia stared at the photo until her eyes burned. This was worse than she'd imagined, because it wasn't just the perfume or coming home late. There was actual evidence now, actual proof that he'd been with someone else. She forwarded the photo to Eun-Gyeol with just one word: explain. His response came immediately. It's not what it looks like. Please wait until I get home. Don't make assumptions. But what else was she supposed to do? The evidence was right there in front of her. She'd been so stupid, believing that someone like Eun-Gyeol would actually want to build a life with her. He could have anyone. Sophisticated women who understood his world, who belonged in it. What was she, except a secretary who'd gotten in over her head? By the time evening came, Olivia had worked herself into a state. She'd packed a bag, planning to stay at a hotel for a few days while she figured out what to do. She was zipping it up when Eun-Gyeol burst through the door, looking frantic and significantly more sober than last night. Don't, he said, seeing the bag. Please don't leave. Let me explain. Explain what? That you've been seeing someone behind my back? That everything between us was just, what, convenient for you until something better came along? She hated how her voice cracked, but she couldn't help it. That's not... He took a step forward and she took one back. He stopped, hands raised. Olivia, I swear to you, nothing happened with Seo-Yun. Nothing. Seo-Yun, you're on a first-name basis with her? That somehow made it worse. She's a business associate. Her father runs one of the largest import companies in Asia, and he wants to partner with us for legitimate business opportunities, the kind that could help me go legal like we talked about. He was talking fast now, desperate. I've been meeting with her for weeks, trying to set this up, and I couldn't tell you because the deal isn't done yet, and if word got out... So instead, you just let me think you were cheating. Olivia felt tears starting, and she angrily wiped them away. You could have told me you were meeting with someone. You could have been honest instead of sneaking around. I know, and I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting the deal, protecting you if things went wrong, but I see now that I messed up. Badly. He looked wrecked, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept either. Last night was supposed to be a celebration dinner because her father finally agreed to the partnership. I had a few drinks more than I should have, and Seo-Yun called me a cab. That's it. That's all that happened. Olivia wanted to believe him. She really did, but the hurt was still too raw. And the person who sent me that photo? Who was that? His jaw tightened. Probably someone trying to drive a wedge between us. Someone who benefits from me being distracted and making mistakes. He paused. I'm having it traced now, but my guess, someone from the rival group we thought we dealt with. So this is my life now? People sending me photos, trying to manipulate me, using our relationship as a weapon? She sank down onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. I don't know if I can do this, Eun-Gyeol. I don't know if I'm strong enough. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, not touching, but close. You're the strongest person I know. You've handled everything this life has thrown at you with grace and courage I could never manage. But I understand if this is too much, if I'm too much. His voice cracked. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. I'll make sure you're safe, make sure you have everything you need, but I won't trap you here if you're not happy. That's the problem, though, isn't it? She looked at him through blurred vision. I am happy with you, or I was. I love you, and that makes all of this so much harder, because I want to believe you. I want to trust you. But how can I when you keep things from me? I'll do better, he promised. No more secrets, no more protecting you by keeping you in the dark. Full transparency from now on, I swear it. Just, please don't leave. Not yet. Give me a chance to prove I mean it. Olivia closed her eyes, fighting with herself. Part of her wanted to grab her bag and walk out, protect her heart before it got broken beyond repair. But the other part, the part that had fallen completely in love with this complicated, frustrating man, wanted to stay and fight for what they had. I need time, she said finally. I need space to think about whether I can really live like this, always wondering who's watching, who's trying to hurt us through each other. That's not fair to ask of you right now, but it's where I am. Take all the time you need, Yoon-gil said quietly. I'll be here, waiting. She nodded and picked up her bag. He didn't try to stop her as she walked out the door, and that somehow hurt worse than anything. She wanted him to fight harder, to beg her to stay, but she also knew that giving her space was his way of respecting her needs. The hotel room was cold and impersonal, and Olivia spent the first night crying into pillows that smelled like industrial detergent. Her phone kept buzzing with messages from Eun-gyeol, but she couldn't bring herself to read them yet, not while everything still felt so raw. 3 days passed with room service and overthinking. Olivia called in sick to work, which probably wasn't fooling anyone, and spent most of her time staring at the ceiling trying to figure out what she wanted. Her friends back in Johannesburg said she was crazy for even considering staying with someone whose life was this complicated. But they didn't know Yoon-gyeol, not really. They didn't see how he remembered her coffee order without being told, or how he listened when she talked about her dreams, or how he made her feel like she mattered. On day 4, there was a knock on her hotel room door. She opened it to find Mrs. Choi standing there with a container of homemade soup and a stern expression. "You look terrible," Mrs. Choi said without preamble, pushing past her into the room. "Nice to see you too," Olivia muttered, closing the door. Mrs. Choi set the soup down and turned to face her, hands on hips. "That boy is a mess without you. Haven't seen him eat in days. Walks around that apartment like a ghost. Whatever happened between you two, you need to fix it." "It's not that simple." "It never is," Mrs. Choi interrupted. "Love is complicated, especially when you're dealing with someone like Yoon-gyeol. But let me tell you something. I've worked for that family for 20 years. I watched that boy grow up, saw him turn into the hard man he needed to be to survive. And in all that time, I never saw him happy. Not really. Not until you—" She paused, her expression softening. "You brought light back into his life. Don't throw that away because you're scared." "I'm not scared," Olivia protested weakly. I don't know if I can trust him again." "Did he cheat on you?" "No, but did he lie to you?" "He kept things from me." "To protect a business deal that could change both your lives," Mrs. Choi finished. "Was it smart? No. Was it well-intentioned? Probably. Men are idiots when they're trying to take care of the people they love. They think they're being noble when really they're just making everything worse." Despite everything, Olivia felt a smile tug at her lips. "You really think he loves me?" "Child, that boy would burn down the world for you. I've never seen him like this with anyone. So yes, I think he loves you. The question is whether you love him enough to work through the hard parts." After Mrs. Choi left, Olivia finally read through all of Eun-gyeol's messages. There were dozens of them, spanning from reassurances to apologies to random updates about his day, like he couldn't stand the silence between them. The most recent one, sent this morning, just said, "I miss you. Come home when you're ready, or don't. Either way, I love you." She stared at those words for a long time before making a decision. When Olivia walked back into the penthouse that evening, Yoon-gyeol was sitting on the couch in the dark, staring at nothing. He jumped up when he heard the door, hope and fear warring on his face. "You came back," he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "We need to talk," she said, setting down her bag. "Really talk, about everything." "Okay." He gestured to the couch and they sat, maintaining careful distance between them. Where do you want to start? Start by telling me about Seo Yun, everything from the beginning. So he did. He explained how her father had approached him months ago, before Olivia had even moved in, about a potential partnership, how the negotiations had been slow and delicate because it meant opening up his operations to scrutiny, how Seo Yun had been the go-between, meeting with Yoon Gyeol to discuss terms and logistics, how he'd kept it secret because he wanted to surprise Olivia with the news that he'd found a path to legitimacy, to a future where they wouldn't have to constantly look over their shoulders. I wanted to give you the life you deserve, he said quietly. One where you're not wondering if someone's going to use you to get to me, where we can just be normal, or as normal as we can get. But by keeping it secret, you made everything worse, Olivia pointed out. I spent 3 days thinking you'd found someone better, someone who fits into your world easier. Do you know how that felt? I can imagine. He rubbed his face tiredly. And I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now that I was just repeating the same pattern, trying to protect you by shutting you out. That's not fair to either of us. No, it's not. She took a deep breath. Look, I understand why you did it. I even understand that in your mind, you were trying to be thoughtful. But Yoon Gyeol, I need you to understand something too. I don't need you to protect me from your life. I need you to share it with me. The good parts and the complicated parts. That's what being partners means. You're right, he said immediately. You're completely right, and I promise from now on, no more secrets. Even if I think I'm protecting you, even if it seems easier to handle things alone, I'll tell you. All of it. Olivia studied his face, looking for any sign that he was just telling her what she wanted to hear. But all she saw was sincerity and exhaustion and love that made her chest ache. The photos someone sent me. You really think it was sabotage? I know it was. We traced the number to a burner phone, but the timing, the angle. Someone wanted to break us apart, and they almost succeeded. He hesitated. There's something else you should know. The partnership with Seo Yun's father, it's going to make a lot of people unhappy. People who benefit from me operating in the gray areas, so things might get worse before they get better. How much worse? I don't know yet, but I wanted you to have all the information before you decide if you still want this, want us. His voice was steady, but she could see the fear in his eyes, the terror that she'd walk away for good this time. Olivia thought about it, really thought for so long, about what her life would look like without him, safe and simple and utterly empty. Then she thought about what it could be like with him, complicated and sometimes scary, but also full of love and laughter and Sunday morning pancakes. I want us, she said finally, but things have to change. We need better communication, better boundaries, better everything. And I need you to introduce me to Seo Yun because right now she's this faceless woman who I've built up in my head as competition, and that's not fair to anyone. Relief flooded Yoon Gyeol's face so completely that he actually sagged against the couch. Done. Anything you want. I'll set up a dinner, all of us together, so you can see that she's just business. Nothing more. Okay. Olivia shifted closer, closing some of the distance between them. And I'm sorry, too, for assuming the worst without giving you a chance to explain, for running instead of fighting. That wasn't fair, either. You had every right to be angry. Maybe, but I could have been angry while still listening. She reached over and took his hand, lacing their fingers together the way they always did. We both messed up. Let's agree to do better going forward. Deal, he said, squeezing her hand. They sat in silence for a while, just holding hands and being together. Eventually, Yoon Gyeol spoke again. I really did miss you. These past few days, the apartment felt wrong without you in it. I missed you too, Olivia admitted. Turns out I got used to having you around. Your terrible coffee-making skills, the way you leave books everywhere, how you always steal the blankets at night. I missed all of it. I don't steal the blankets. You absolutely do. agree to disagree. But he was smiling, that rare, full smile that transformed his whole face, and Olivia felt something settle back into place inside her chest. They were going to be okay. Maybe not perfect, probably not easy, but okay. And sometimes that was enough. The dinner with Seo-yoon happened a week later at a restaurant that specialized in fusion cuisine, Korean and South African dishes mixed together in ways that surprisingly worked. Olivia was nervous walking in, still fighting against mental images she'd built up of this woman who'd nearly destroyed her relationship. Seo-yoon turned out to be nothing like she'd imagined. She was professional and friendly, with a firm handshake and a business degree from Oxford. She also spent the first 10 minutes of dinner gushing about her girlfriend, a lawyer she'd met during a case involving her father's company, showing them photos on her phone like a proud peacock. "Oh," Olivia said, feeling incredibly stupid. "You're very gay," Seo-yoon confirmed cheerfully. "Has been my whole life. Did Yoon-geol not mention that?" "It didn't seem relevant," Yoon-geol said, looking amused. "But yeah, I probably should have led with that information. Would have saved us some trouble." Olivia kicked him under the table. "You think?" Despite the rocky start, dinner went well. Seo-yoon explained the partnership in detail, how it would give Eun-gyeol legitimate business channels while slowly phasing out the more questionable aspects of his organization. It wouldn't happen overnight, but within a few years, he could be completely legal, free from the constant threat and danger that came with operating in the shadows. "This could really work," Olivia said later that night back at the apartment. "You could actually have a normal life." "We could have a normal life," Yoon-gyeol corrected. "This isn't just about me anymore." "No," she agreed, curling up next to him on the couch. "It's about us, our future, whatever that looks like." Over the next few months, things slowly stabilized. The partnership moved forward and Eun-gyeol started delegating more responsibilities to his team, trusting them to handle things he used to insist on managing himself. He came home earlier, smiled more, seemed lighter somehow, like he'd been carrying a weight for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down. Olivia launched her consulting business with Yoon-gyeol's full support, using connections he'd built over the years to land her first few clients. She discovered she was really good at helping struggling companies reorganize their operations, finding efficiencies they'd missed. Within 6 months, she had more work than she could handle, and was thinking about hiring an assistant. They traveled like she'd wanted, taking long weekends to visit places neither of them had been. They went to Cape Town, where Olivia showed him where she grew up, introduced him to her family, who were initially suspicious of this Korean businessman, but gradually warmed up when they saw how happy she was. They visited Busan, where Yoon-gyeol walked her through his childhood haunts, pointing out the restaurant where he'd had his first job washing dishes, the school where he'd gotten into fights defending kids who couldn't defend themselves. "You've always been a protector," Olivia observed as they walked along the beach at sunset. "Even when you were young." "Someone had to be," he said with a shrug. "Might as well be me." "That's very noble. Also very exhausting." "Yeah, well, I'm working on that whole letting other people help thing. You've been a good influence." She bumped her shoulder against his. "I'm a great influence, and you know, it." Sunday mornings became sacred, just like they'd planned. No phones, no work, no emergencies, unless the building was literally on fire. They tried new recipes and mostly failed at them, creating disasters in the kitchen that somehow still tasted good enough to eat. They talked about everything and nothing, making plans and changing them, learning how to be partners in every sense of the word. On their 1-year anniversary of officially being together, Yoon-gyeol took Olivia back to that lavender farm where they'd spent her birthday. The fields were in full bloom again, stretching toward the horizon in endless purple waves. They walked hand in hand through the flowers, comfortable in the silence between them. "I have something for you," Yoon-gyeol said when they reached the big tree where they'd had their picnic. "If it's more terrible cake from that bakery, I'm breaking up with you." "It's not cake." He pulled a small box from his pocket and Olivia's heart stopped. "Before you panic, it's not what you think, or maybe it is, but also it isn't. Just let me explain." He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm dangling from it, a tiny key. Simple, but beautiful, clearly chosen with care. "It's a key to the apartment," he said, even though that was obvious. "But it's also more than that. It's me saying that I want you there permanently in every way that matters. It's me promising that I'll keep working on being better, on being the partner you deserve. And it's me hoping that maybe someday when we're ready, we can talk about making this even more permanent." Olivia took the bracelet with shaking hands, vision blurring. "You're not proposing." "Not yet," he said with a small smile. "I'm not that brave yet, and also I wanted to ask your father first. Do it properly. But I'm saying that's where I see this going, where I want it to go, if you do too." "I do," she whispered, then laughed through her tears. "Sorry, wrong ceremony. I mean, yes, I want that too, all of it. The permanent thing, the future thing, all the complicated, wonderful, messy parts of building a life together." Yoongi-yeol helped her put on the bracelet and she held up her wrist, watching the key catch the sunlight. It was perfect, so perfectly them, and she felt her heart expand with so much love she didn't know how to contain it. "Thank you," she said, "for coming to find me that night, for fighting for us when things got hard, for being exactly who you are." "Thank you for staying," he replied, "for seeing past all the complications to the person underneath, for making me want to be better." They spent the rest of the day in the lavender fields, making new memories to layer over the old ones. And when the sun started to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Olivia looked at Yoongi-yeol and thought about how far they'd come. From secretary and boss to partners in every sense of the word, from two people trying to survive in difficult circumstances to two people building something real and lasting. It hadn't been easy. There'd been misunderstandings and fear and moments where it would have been simpler to walk away. But they'd chosen each other, again and again. And that made all the difference. "What are you thinking?" Yoongi-yeol asked, noticing her expression. "That I'm happy," Olivia said simply. "Right here, right now with you. I'm completely happy." "Yeah," he agreed, pulling her closer. "Me too." And in that moment, surrounded by lavender and sunset and possibility, everything felt exactly right. They had their whole future ahead of them, full of Sunday morning pancakes and business ventures, and probably more complications than either of them wanted to think about. But they'd face it together, hand in hand, one day at a time, just like they'd promised. That's where we're leaving them for now. Happy. Together. Building something real despite all the chaos. If this story hit different for you, let me know down in the comments what your favorite part was. And honestly, if you stuck around for all 14,000 words of this, you're the real MVP, so thank you.